You just saw the categories of build that pay inside your own business, the automations, the internal tools, the customer-facing features, the content engine. And if your business is anything like most, you didn't find one candidate. You found 5, a pile of things you could build, all of them defensible, all of them with a leverage point you could point at, which is a good problem to have, right up until it becomes the problem that stops you. Because here's where operators stall. They've got 5 good ideas, so they pick the one that's most exciting, the one that sounds impressive at a dinner party, the shiny one. And 6 weeks later, they've poured real work into a build that was technically a good idea and a terrible first move, because 3 of the other 4 would have paid back faster, for half the effort. They didn't pick wrong on whether it pays. They picked wrong on which one pays first. And that order is the whole game when you've only got so many hours to spend. So here's what I'm going to give you: a way to take that pile of candidates and rank them, honestly, not by gut, not by which one's most fun. So the one you build first is the one with the highest return for the least work. By the end of this, you'll have a simple scoring pass you can run on every idea on your list, a second number most people forget that flips the whole ranking, and a final check that catches the build you're blind to. You walk out with your version 1 build chosen and the rest queued in the right order. Let me start with the trap, because naming it is half the fix. The trap is that you rank your builds by how interesting they are to you. The AI knowledge-based chatbot feels modern and cool, so it floats to the top of your mind. Meanwhile, the unglamorous one, the thing that quietly reconciles your numbers every morning or drafts the replies your support team is drowning in, feels boring, so it sinks. But boring and high return are best friends. The most profitable build in your business is almost never the most exciting one. It's the one sitting on the most pain you've gotten used to. So the first discipline is just this: you're not allowed to rank by excitement. We're going to rank by something you can actually defend. The first pass is about the return. How much is this build worth if it works? And there are 3 questions that tell you fast. Run each one against every candidate on your list. Question 1, what's painful? Where does your team complain the most? Where do you lose the most time on work you can't stand? Where do customers keep hitting something slow or broken? Pain is the first signal, because pain is just unrealized return sitting in plain sight. If a build doesn't relieve a real pain, if nobody's actually hurting, it isn't urgent, no matter how clever it is. Question 2, what's repeated? This is the one that separates a real build from a nice to have, and it's the one excitement makes you skip. Pain alone isn't enough. A build only pays if the painful work happens often. Every day, every week, every single customer, because the return compounds on the repetition. Something that's painful but happens once a year, that's an afternoon of annoyance, not a build. Something painful that happens 40 times a day is a leverage point with a flashing sign on it. So you're not just asking, does this hurt? You're asking, does this hurt on repeat? Question 3, what's measurable? Even painful, repeated work can fail as a build if you can't tell whether it worked. And you already know why this one matters, because we just spent a whole lesson on it. If you can't measure the return, you can't prove it paid, you can't earn the next one, and you can't tell a real win from a feeling. Make customers happier isn't measurable. Cut first response time under 2 hours is. Get more leads isn't measurable on its own. Lift trial to paid conversion is. If you can't name the number this build is supposed to move, that's not a reason to abandon it. It's a sign you haven't scoped it sharply enough yet. A build you can't measure is a build you can't defend. So now, you've got a way to score the return side. Take your candidates and rate each one on those 3. Painful, repeated, measurable. You don't need a fancy system. A simple, low, medium, high on each is plenty. Or put numbers on it if you like, 1 through 3, and total them. So the ranking is something you can actually look at instead of a feeling. Let me make that concrete with 3 candidates, because the moment you score them side by side, the pile sorts itself. Say one of yours is AI drafted replies for the support team that's drowning. Painful? Absolutely. High. Call it a 3. Repeated? Hundreds of tickets a week. A 3. Measurable? Dead easy. You watch first response time. A 3. That one scores about as high as it gets. Call it a 9. Now the second, a sales meeting prep tool that pulls a customer's history into one page before the call. Painful? Somewhat. A 2. Repeated? A handful of meetings a week. A 2. Measurable? You can tie it to meeting to close, though the baseline's noisy. A 3. Lands around a 7. Still real, just not the first one. Now the third, the one your gut loves, an AI chatbot over your company wiki. Painful? Honestly low. The wiki mostly works. A1. Repeated? Some. A 2. Measurable? Loosely. A 2. That's about a 5. And look what just happened. The dinner party build, the chatbot, sank to the bottom on its own, and the unglamorous support build you'd half stop seeing rose to the top. You didn't argue it into place. The score did it. These exact numbers are just an illustration. Yours will land differently, but that's the shape every time. But here's the move almost nobody makes, and it's the one that turns a decent ranking into the right one. The return is only half the equation. You cannot pick your highest ROI build by looking at return alone, because ROI is return over investment, and you've only measured the return. You're missing the bottom of the fraction, the investment, what it's actually going to cost you to build the thing. This is the second number, and it's the one excitement hides from you completely, because the exciting build and the expensive build are very often the same build. So for each of your high return candidates, you ask a second question, just as honestly as the first. What's the real work to make this real? And I mean the real work, not the fantasy, where you describe it once, and the AI hands you a finished product. Remember what we keep coming back to. AI is not set it and forget it. There's no autopilot. The cost of a build is the work you still put in at the leverage point, writing the spec in enough detail that it's actually right, reviewing the plan before it runs, steering it with feedback until it holds, and then the verifying and the wiring into your real systems. That's the investment. That's the bottom of the fraction. A build that returns a lot but takes you 2 months of that work might lose on day 1 to a build that returns a little less but ships in a weekend. So score the effort too. Same simple scale. Is this light, medium, or heavy to build? A light one might be a focused automation on a process you already understand cold. A heavy one might be a customer-facing feature that has to be reliable, secure, and live in front of real users. Much more spec, much more review, much higher stakes if it breaks. And be honest, because people lowball the effort on the build they're excited about and inflate it on the one they're avoiding. Rate the work for what it really is. Now, you put the two numbers together, and this is the ranking that matters. High return, low effort. That's the top of your list. That's your version 1. It's the build that pays the most for the least, gets you a measured win the fastest, and earns you the right to do the next one bigger. High return, but heavy effort. That's real, but it's a version 2 or 3, something you graduate to once a fast win is already paying. Low return, high effort, that's the shiny trap with its mask off. That's the dinner party build. Cross it off, or at least be honest that it's a someday, not a now. And low return, low effort. Those are the little quality of life builds. Do them in an afternoon between the real ones if you want, but don't kid yourself that they're moving the business. And notice what that order does for you. It gets a real, measured return on the board early while your effort is still low. And that early win is what funds the patience for the bigger builds later. Operators who go biggest first burn their energy on one heavy build and stall before it ever pays. Operators who go highest leverage first stack wins, and each win makes the next one easier to justify. Same list of ideas, completely different outcome, decided entirely by the order you build them in. One more step before you commit, because there's a blind spot this whole process can't see on its own. You scored your own business, and the strange truth about your own business is that you're the worst placed person to see its biggest pain, because you've adapted to it. The thing that would make an outsider wince, you stopped noticing years ago. It's just how we do it. So the most expensive pain in your business is often the one that never made it onto your list at all, because you've gone numb to it. So run a fresh eyes check. Take your top one or two and ask, if a sharp outsider, a peer who runs a similar business, a consultant, even just a smart friend you walk through it with, looked at this same list, would they pick what I picked? Or would they point at something I didn't even write down and say, wait, that's what's killing you. Why is that not on here? If the outside view agrees with you, good. You're not just excited, you're right. Go build your version 1. If they spot a bigger pain, you don't argue. You add it to the list and you rescore it through the exact same pass. Because the ranking is only ever as good as the candidates you put into it. Fresh eyes are how you make sure the real winner was even in the running. And that's the whole method. Score the return. Painful, repeated, measurable. Score the real effort to build it. Honestly, no autopilot fantasy. Rank by return. Over effort, build the highest leverage one first, then check it against eyes that aren't numb to your own business. Do that, and the build you start tomorrow isn't the one that sounded best in your head. It's the one that pays the most, the soonest, for the least. And this isn't a one-time audit. It's the same move you'll make for the rest of your life as an operator. Every quarter, a fresh pile of things you could build. And every quarter, the winner is the same shape. It's the operating rhythm. Find the leverage points, put your real work where they are, in the order that pays. If you ever want proof this scales past picking one build, it's the whole reason I'm able to teach it. I ran this exact judgment to build ScaleBoss, a real production business operating system, and then Revistack, choosing what to build and in what order on a budget that used to be flat out impossible. Same questions, same return over effort math, just pointed at a whole company instead of a single feature. Go look at them when you want to see where this goes. But first, you've got your version 1. So next, we build it, and we set up the measure and improve loop that turns that one build into proof, and proof into the next one. I'll see you there.